our initial goal and our role as the IDF is not to set the political outcome, but rather to make sure that the military outcome, the defense of the state of Israel, the security of the people in southern Israel, the fact that we are living, even as we speak, under the threats of Hamas's rockets here in Tel Aviv, that needs to be removed once and for all. They chose to go to war with Israel. We will choose to win it.
Israel's military says 20 children are among the hostages being held in Gaza by Hamas. Israel's Defense Force also believes the majority of the hostages taken on October the 7th, or around 200 of them, are still alive. Well, joining us now is Lt Col Peter Lerner, who's an IDF spokesman. Good afternoon to you, Lieutenant Colonel.
Hi, good afternoon, Kathy. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show. Just tell us first about this claim about the 20 children among the hostages. What intelligence are you basing that on?
Well, we've seen the videos. We know who's missing. We do have about 100 people that are unaccounted for, but there is obviously a constant flow of intelligence that is coming in. A lot of the videos that the Palestinian terrorist organization, Hamas, themselves, that they broadcasted, it shows that they've been abducted to Gaza. So of course, there's a lot of information coming in, and we have to keep in mind as well that in the exchanges in the aftermath of the initial attack, after they'd come in and before we were able to take control, but once we'd taken control and killed so many of their terrorists, because they're so proud of what they were doing, they all had body cameras on, and so we're going through the body cams and seeing a lot of what actually happened. The atrocities, the brutality, and a lot of the abductions as well.
Is assessing that intelligence and the time that that's taking, is that one reason for the delay in this ground invasion happening? We keep getting told you're ready to go, you've got the green light, all of that. But is there a worry that if you go in prematurely before you've assessed all the intelligence, some of those hostages could end up being casualties?
No, the hostages are at the top of our priority list. Of course, the efforts in order to bring them home, including the demand by Prime Minister Netanyahu to allow the International Committee of the Red Cross to meet the hostages, is based on the assumption that they are still alive and that Hamas is responsible for their well-being. Of course, it does influence our operational planning and what we are trying to do. And of course, the strikes that we are conducting now against Hamas, its infrastructure, and the terrorists itself that implemented and conducted the attacks.
So in other words, if delaying a few days means that you're less likely, let's put it another way. If delaying a few days means that you're more likely to extract some of those hostages alive, you'll delay.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying the ground operation will take place at a time when we are prepared, once we have the green light, and when we feel that operationally it best suits us. We understand that the battleground is a complex, very complex battleground, to say the least, and we need to be prepared for that eventuality, and we need to make sure that the forces have their specific tasks, that they know what they're doing, that they have the right equipment, that they have the right training. That is what the process that we've been going through now over the last 14 days. It's not a rush mobilization, but as we've said, we understand it's going to take time, and therefore we need to go in accordance, not in a rushed sprint, but rather with a slow, calm, collected, I would say stage by stage manner, not in a way that could potentially put them at risk, but rather in a way that potentially could actually alleviate that situation.
So you haven't got the green light yet?
Once the government gives us the green light, we obviously won't be announcing what, when, or how we will be mobilizing. We would not want to risk our forces, but once the green light is given, we will make our preparations and we will be ready to mobilize.
So it's not imminent yet?
I'm not saying that.
Okay, fair enough. I wonder how long all of this takes, in your view. We've had Benjamin Netanyahu talking about a long war. What does that mean?
So we first of all need to destroy Hamas's capabilities as a terrorist organization. So that obviously isn't something you can just do in one night. It's taking out the physical infrastructure, the command and control positions, where they're operating, where they're meeting in order to launch attacks, their rocket capabilities, their explosive drone capabilities, We talk about a terrorist organization, but in effect, it's a terrorist army that has, we saw how they breached the perimeter and stormed into our communities. It wasn't a haphazard, chance thing. It was something very, very organized. So that type of battle means it's going to be very long, I would say, very precise, very forceful, and indeed, we intend on winning it. After we stabilize.
Is it winnable, though? I mean, destroying Hamas in the way that you've described is seen by many as you've set yourself an objective that is unachievable.
I don't believe it's unachievable. We understand that Hamas can never, ever be permitted to govern the Gaza Strip again as a staging ground for terrorism. And that's why the goal that the government has set for us is indeed so dramatic. And that is what actually sets this war apart from all of the other conflicts we've had with Hamas in the last 15 years, because throughout the years, there was never a strategic goal to remove Hamas. They chose, once they conducted their strategic, combined, coordinated attack against Israel and their people, they basically signed their own death warrant. They signed their destiny in their choice of action. This is a reality we can't accept, and it's something nobody should accept.
But there's a lot of concern amongst your allies in the US, for example, and the UK, what happens after the invasion, because you've made it clear you don't intend to occupy Gaza, but the defence minister has promised what he calls a new security regime. What does that entail?
One that does not threaten Israel and Israelis. I believe that, and as the rightly said, we don't intend in reoccupying the Gaza Strip, but there needs to be a clear sense that there is no threat to Israel on one hand, and I would say the Palestinian people need to determine their destiny, but that needs to make sure that destiny doesn't threaten our civilians. So if we look forward, there are many options on the table, but our initial goal and our role as the IDF is not to set the political outcome, but rather to make sure that the military outcome, the defense of the state of Israel, the security of the people in southern Israel, the fact that we are living, even as we speak, under the threats of Hamas's rockets here in Tel Aviv, that needs to be removed once and for all. They chose to go to war with Israel. We will choose to win it.
Well, the situation in Gaza is described as a hellhole by the UN at the moment. The aid's not getting in. Rafah crossing isn't going to open today. The UN Human Rights Commissioner has said they're very concerned at the airstrikes on Gaza, particularly in the south, because you told people to move from the north of the Strip to the south, and now they're getting punished for doing that, doing exactly what you asked them to do.
So I would say, first of all, the alternatives for people staying in the north, where we're conducting extensive operations, much broader in scope and depth in the north, compared to the precision strikes that are taking place in the south, is much better than being in the north. And indeed, we understand that the situation in the south is not an optimal situation. Of course,
not optimal is a kind of understatement of some tastelessness, you might say.
I accept that, and I would say the humanitarian consequences are the responsibility of Hamas. But what we are trying to do is actually keep people out of harm's way, while Hamas is trying to put them in harm's way. And indeed, we are determined to defeat Hamas. And we look at the people of Gaza, and they are not our enemy. The terrorists are our enemy. Hamas, that governed the Gaza Strip in the way that they did at the expense of the people of Gaza. We know of, and you've widely reported in Times Radio about the tunnel network that they've invested in. Imagine how much money they have invested in this network of death tunnels beneath Gaza. But
if the people of Gaza are not your enemy, what are you doing to get aid to them? Because time is running out.
So we are not in Gaza at this time. We are conducting strikes and operations from the air. Indeed, we will differentiate, and we continue to differentiate and operate based on three principles of differentiation in the battlefield, on military necessity and proportionality. And we will continue to do so throughout this military operation, or the war that we are conducting now on Hamas. And I would say, yes, as we move forward, the relationship that we have, the ongoing operating relationship that we have with the international humanitarian organizations that are operating in Gaza will continue to be open, and in order to facilitate their activities to give help, aid to the Palestinians of Gaza. You said we don't know when the Egyptians will open Rafah for the trucks that are waiting on the other side. But when they do, how can we be certain that that aid doesn't go to Hamas? Just 3 days ago, UNRWA, the UN relief organization in Gaza, reported that Hamas had commandeered fuel and medical supplies that could have gone to the people of Gaza.
But while you hesitate, people are dying in Gaza and the humanitarian situation is worsening by the hour.
The humanitarian situation in Gaza is the responsibility of Hamas, not Israel. Israel is conducting its operations against Hamas, but Hamas chooses to steal from the UN fuel and medical supplies for its own needs at the expense of the people of Gaza.
Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, thank you very much for joining us on Times Radio.